Welcome to another fun-filled edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I'm Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app. Why? Because we said so. That's why. But you can listen to any of our other 5 live shows, including this one, Second City Sports, which you're doing right now. If you miss any of our shows, including ours, that's okay. That's why you download that Sports Zone Chicago app. You could go back and listen and watch any of the shows at your own leisure. Whether it's the Apple, iTunes Store, Amazon, Google Play, make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. And if you want to catch our audio version of this podcast, you can do so by subscribing to War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. We're available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And you can follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at War Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very different opinions. If you want to comment on any of our topics during our 2-hour extravaganza today, you can do so by going to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something stupid, today is not the day to do so. We'll tell you why in just a minute. No day is any day to do stupid stuff. But if you decide to troll or do something stupid, Lakeena will politely give you the Beerland Beer boot.
Bye-bye.
I love when I say that. Lakeena, we had to unfortunately start off on a very sad note in the Chicago sports broadcasting community. We lost Jeff Dickerson of ESPN Chicago a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, we lost another legend. His name was Les Grobstein. He was a Chicago sports broadcaster, talk show host, national and local sports reporter. He passed away yesterday at the age of 69. He's been working at the Score in his second stint since 2009, hosting overnights. He worked at the Score the first time from 1997 through 2001. He worked at other various radio stations throughout his career, including WLS in the early to late 1990s. He worked at ESPN 1000 for a short time. He worked at Sporting News Radio, where I met him. I'll give you a little quick story about that in just a minute. But he worked at various local and national outlets. He covered every big event that was related to Chicago sports, including the Cubs 2016 World Series, all 6 Chicago Bulls championships in the 90s, the 3 Stanley Cups, so the Chicago Blackhawks in the last decade, of course, the 2005 Chicago White Sox with the World Series over Houston. He was there for every major event representing Chicago, whether it was local or national, to the fullest. He was engaging with his listeners, listening to tributes on 670 The Score for the last few hours, having various colleagues and co-workers call in, describing to the listeners what a nice guy he was, what a hard worker he was. He was a man full of knowledge, both present knowledge and of the past. And he married his passion with sports, with covering all these big events, hosting various shows, and just talking about the nuances of sports. He was a fan, a Chicago sports fan through and through, and that's what you got from Les Grobstein throughout the years.
Yeah, you go through some of the tweets through all morning long. Bruce Miles, of course, who's a veteran, Chicago media veteran, he posted, the Grobbers, first sports broadcast for Rosemont. It was a soccer game between the old Chicago Horizons and the New York Arrows. It's from like a professional soccer team from like long ago. It was semi-pro, but just shows you how long he's been around. And seeing, and he also wasn't afraid to share his opinions, the Grobber. I mean, especially remember years ago when Jay Cutler got traded to Chicago. And everyone was excited. People were saying Happy Jay Cutler Day, blah, blah, blah. He was one of the few to say, that didn't like the move. And, of course, he actually ended up proving right. He was also there for the, I believe he was there for like the first, or maybe they think the first two of the later three-P for the Bulls back in the late '90s. He covered those Bulls teams, and also too, he got a chance to see a Cubs World Series. Of course, he had been doing score overnights for over a decade now, and I listening to some of the various stations, to the score. I'm sure ESPN 1000. I'm sure they'll do something tomorrow, but excuse me, seeing David Schuster, who of course he and Grobber had worked together for years, sharing some
Mhm.
stories, and some of the other folks, John Greenberg, who of course is a veteran Chicago columnist. He writes for sports, he writes for the Athletic now. Shared a really good story as well. He's also gonna, he says he's working on an article, in tribute to him. But it just shows you that he was also a fan. He was just as much a fan as he was a host. He was sort of the voice of the fan, and I think he definitely epitomizes what a lot of Chicago sports fans see and hear when they watch sports. He was sort of the voice of those folks. So that's probably why he was so relatable to the listeners. And you hear stories. I'm sure you've seen the various tweets all morning from folks who grew up listening to him at the various stations. I know you said you met him at the old Sporting News, and you
Mhm.
know it, yeah, and it's one of those things where you just feel like, what, I mean, it's been a tough the last few weeks for Chicago sports media, people and their colleagues and fans. Of course, Jeff Dickerson, of course, lost his battle with colon cancer a couple of weeks ago, and now
Mhm.
the sudden death, with Les Grobstein is just it just makes you like another. It just makes you feel
Mhm.
really upset because there were no words to describe it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we all know this, Lakina. Life isn't fair, and unfortunately, stuff like this happens. But still, we had to march on, and I had to give myself a daily reminder this morning. We all have our personal issues to work through, and we have little things to worry about in our daily lives. But be lucky that somebody else has it worse than you, and so that's what I take from it. And number two, follow your passion, like we're doing here on Sports Zone Chicago, and we like talking sports with you guys. Yes, we disagree every once in a while, but it's all in good fun. It's all about respect, and just live your life to the fullest. Do what you love, because sometimes things happen and you just don't know. So enjoy every minute of your life, and enjoy every breath, and don't waste time. I always tell people that whether you chase your passion, or anything else you following in your life, hopefully it's a good going in a positive direction. Just enjoy it and don't take things for granted. And that's something I learned as I've gotten older. Lakina, not saying I didn't do this when I was younger, but I don't have time to waste. And that belief with me is much stronger now than it was, say, 10 years ago. Not saying
Hmm.
I was wasting time and doing stupid stuff, but just don't waste time. Just go after what you're passionate about. And this is part of what we do here on Sports on Chicago. And Les Grabstein, getting back to him, he laid the groundwork for future broadcasters like us. I know he helped out the guys that I worked with for many years at D and Davis, with Kenan DeMons and Tony Gill as well. And so I know those guys are feeling it as well, because I know, well, let's talk to them a few times, because the D and Davis crew guest hosted for Les many times over the last couple of years on 670 The Score. So Les Grobstein, of course, his legacy will go on forever. He'll never be forgotten.
Yeah, if you get a chance to listen to the podcast with our buddy Mark Grody, of course, he and Les worked
Hmm.
together for many years. He did updates, and did a crosstalk and such, and you know he actually did it in a Grover voice, which was just so hilarious. Go to the
Yeah.
Audacity app and take a listen to it because it's pretty funny. He guest hosted with another one of our buddies, Rick Camp, today, since Bernstein, our other buddy, really Raheem, were off today.
Hmm.
So you get a chance to listen to that podcast on the Six Seconds Score website and also to the Audacity app. So make sure you guys check that out. And I'm sure Lawrence Holmes, she shared a really great story too. I'm sure he'll share more when he comes back tomorrow about this time. So just make sure you guys check that out.
And also to go to 670 Score on Twitter, there's a GoFundMe account that
Mm.
Les's girlfriend Kathy set up over the last 12 hours or so. And if you guys can contribute any amount that you can to help out the Les Grobstein Fund. So go to 670 Score official Twitter account, and the information you'll find right there. Just a quick story, Lakeena, before we move on. I met Les Grobstein. I was going to I know it's Illinois Media School now, but I still call it ICB. You understand, like, you were there before the name change.
Hmm.
Actually, I was at the Lombard campus. Of course, there was no Chicago campus at the time. But I did my internship at Sporting News Radio when it was based here in Chicago. I know some other sports media name now. I forget what it was because then that network has gone through 4 or 5 name changes. But
Yeah.
I was at Sporting News Radio at the time, and Les Grobstein just got let go by the score at the first time. So he was doing updates. I don't know if you remember this, Lakeena, but it was on the old 820. And of
Yes.
course, this
Oh
was the
yeah.
years after the scores ditched that signal and went to 1160. And
Hmm.
around this time, the score just started on 670.
Hmm.
And so 820 had the local signal to broadcast the local Chicago sports updates. They were still doing Sporting News Radio. It was still a daytime station at
Yes.
the time. It was
Yeah,
a
it was at the
24-hour
time.
network, but
Yes.
it
Yeah.
was still at the old daytime signal, just like the score was originally back in the day. I met Les Grobstein. He said, "Oh yes, and okay, so I'm Les. Nice to meet you." And we were talking for about a couple of minutes. And if you notice, if you listen to his shows throughout the years, he's a human encyclopedia. That's something I try to be,
Yes.
not just because of Les, but we genuinely love sports, and I try to gather as much information as possible. I said at the time, I said from 1980 on, that's all I know. Of course, I knew some history of the sports teams, other than that, blah blah blah. He said, I said, I'll give you a note. Walter Payton, it was the Bears were playing the Falcons the year you were born in 1980. Did you know that Walter Payton was ejected at that game? He told me that Walter Payton was arguing about some call or something. He said Walter Payton got ejected again. I looked at him like, I didn't know that. He said, yeah, it's true. And then we started talking about the Blackhawks and then, of course, the Bulls a little bit. That man was full of knowledge. And it's just folks like that are not made anymore. I know we're in a sports social media era. It's all about the hot takes, and it's all about the shock jock radio and just throwing up something to see if it sticks. Unfortunately, wealth of knowledge like Colin Cowherd. I know some people don't like the way he presents this stuff, but that's on you. But people like him, Les Grobstein, and to a certain extent, hopefully we can get him on this program in the near future. John the Hood. People are just full of wealth of sports knowledge and sports history. They don't make people like those anymore.
Yeah, he was definitely a sports encyclopedia. He can, tell you all types of knowledge, at a drop of the hat. Even when you're not asking for it, you're like, wow, I didn't know that. So yeah, he was definitely kind of like the sports encyclopedia,
Hmm.
if you will. And in that sense, and we don't have those types anymore. And maybe we kind of can get back to that because
Hmm.
look, it's always good to have folks like that can give you like little, even if it's just sort of like the most random, mundane takes, or
Hmm.
little knowledge. It's just a it's fun facts. I think that's the sort of thing that's been missing now. But he's definitely going to be missed, and our thoughts and prayers go out to, of course, his longtime girlfriend Kathy and their son Scott. And so yeah, just and help out if you can. I know I know they need help with with funeral costs. So please
Hmm.
help out when you can. And yeah, I might listen to some old score, the Grobber, shows. This should be very interesting though, and it'll be interesting to see what the score does with that slot. Do they give it? Do they maybe promote it, or do they give it back to the affiliates? Look, Mitch Rosa, who I know a little bit, and
Hmm.
I'm sure he'll figure it out, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so as we said before, our thoughts and prayers are going out to the Les Grobstein family during this difficult time, and to his colleagues and all the friends and colleagues that worked with him. I know they're going through it right now. So we just want to give our tribute to Les Grobstein. He was a Chicago broadcaster through and through. He had passion and respect for all the Chicago sports teams, as I mentioned at the top of the show. So he's definitely going to be missed, and his legacy will never be forgotten. You're listening to Second City Sports on a hashtag Football Monday, as I call it. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Cindy Brown. I want to take this time to commemorate and recognize the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, which is today. Of course, I know many of you guys have the day off, and you're observing the day. It's not just a day off; it should be a day of service. Every day should be a day of service. If if the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was still alive today, he would have made 93 years old. So we just want to recognize that also too, that today is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday. So we just wanted to get that out there for you guys. We didn't forget, even though we were talking about Let's Grab things just a few moments ago. Lakeena, let's get to the business at hand. We had Super NFL Wildcard Weekend. It kicked off on Saturday with 2 games. Let's review. We're going to review all 5 games that took place this past weekend. We'll give you our preview of tonight's Rams Cardinals game at the end of the hour. But Lakeena, the first game that was up, it was the Cincinnati Bengals taking care of the Las Vegas Raiders 26-19. Derek Carr for the Raiders was 29 of 54 for 310 yards. He had a touchdown pass and an interception. On the flip side for the Bengals, Joe Burrow was 24-34, 244 yards and 2 touchdown passes. Lakeena, as I said on Friday's show, the Bengals had to run the ball in to protect Joe Burrow. Now, the Bengals didn't run the ball with any consistency like I thought they were going to. I know Joe Mixon only had 48 yards on 17 carries, but it was the Cincinnati receiving core, the main receiver of Jamar Chase in his playoff debut. He had 9 catches for 116 yards.
And also, too, we should also mention that the fact that this was, their first, first win for Cincinnati, their first playoff win in 31 years. So it had been a long time, which is the 3rd longest span of playoff wins in NFL history. So we want to make sure we get that out the way. And actually, Super Wildcard Weekend wasn't exactly super. This was probably one of the few games that were actually, close. If you want to do it that way. Look, they kept Burrow upright. I mean, he was sacked 2 times. The Raiders had their chances to catch up. Some of the the talent portion of it just it kind of showed in the end. So it just going to be very it just wasn't. And the Raiders, you could say that they got backed in or they got lucky, blah blah blah. But they kind of earned their way in. I mean, they didn't really run the ball much, and the Bengals, especially those last couple of quarters. I mean, they didn't really the experience. You can tell that kind of showed, but. Look, I mean, Jamar Chase, showed you why he'll definitely be up there for offensive rookie of the year, and another didn't catch a touchdown, but kept the chains moving, so that helped a lot in the Bengals' cause. So it's look, it'll be interesting to see, especially in their next round matchup. We'll talk about that later in the week, but it was actually their defense, and I think the Raiders just kind of tried to do too much and kind of cost them in the end.
And also, too, let's give Cincinnati's defense credit. They sacked Derek Carr 3 times, and they picked up Derek Carr, as I mentioned, 1 time. So their defense did come to light, especially during the latter stages of the game. I want to go back to Derek Carr, Lakeena, especially on that last drive. I know some people want to give him the Mitchell Trubisky treatment like we do here in Chicago with all the quarterbacks that don't do well. I'm not going to sit here and ask if Derek Carr has played his last game as a Las Vegas Raider, but here's the thing. On that last drive, I thought that the play calling should have been a little bit better. And like you said, they had their chances, but they just couldn't punch it in. Now early in the game, they kept up with the Cincinnati Bengals. They had 13 points at halftime. It's just that when they need to score a touchdown to force overtime, they just couldn't come through.
Well, and then you could say that I think it's all those things. You can probably say that the execution wasn't good, and also the play calling wasn't good either. So it's one of those things where you just get, okay, you know what, we can blame all you want, but it's like I said before, it's also going to be interesting to see what the Raiders do. I mean, like you said, could this be his last, Derek Carr, his last game, in a Raiders uniform? Look, if you're Steve Bisaccia, you're thinking, hey, look, I kept all this stuff together. We made the playoffs despite of everything that happened off the field. We won't rehash any of that. But, after all of that, I think if you're, Coach Bisaccia, you're thinking, hey, you know what? I should be considered to get this job too. And, like I said, with, Josh Jacobs, they didn't really give the ball to him very much. So I think that kind of cost him as well. So, this is something that the Raiders are going to have to figure out. And I'm sure Mark Davis will definitely have his suggestions, if you will. I know Jim Harbaugh, or the name is being floated around for perhaps the Raiders job. But like I said before, if you're Steve Bisaccia, excuse me, if you're Bisaccia, you're thinking, hey, you know what, I have a shot here. I have a legitimate, shot to, for this job.
The Cincinnati Bengals move on to take on the Tennessee Titans in Nashville next Saturday afternoon. Let's get one more game in before we have to break for the bottom of the hour. This was a dud. I only turned to this game twice, and I'm glad I did because it was the Buffalo Bills destroying the New England Patriots by the score of 47-17. Josh Allen for Buffalo, 21 of 25, 308 yards and 5 touchdown passes. Devin Singletary, as I've been saying all season long, they need to let him run the ball and just let him go. Well, let him go. They did. 16 carries, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Dawson Knox, the stud tight end for the Bills, 5 catches, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Lakeena, it was all about the Buffalo offense jumping on New England early. Bill Belichick, or Bill Belichick, as I like to call him on the show, he has no answer for Josh Allen, and the Bills defense stepped up big time as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those games where they had to jump on them early, and that's exactly what they did. I mean, they scored in their first 5 possessions. They actually scored a touchdown in their first 5 possessions, which is definitely a first in the Super Bowl era. So, they just look. I look, Devin Singletary. I think, they were actually remembered that he's actually a running back and that he's on their team. So yeah, so they finally remembered that they had him on there. So he rushed for 2 touchdowns, and it was actually their defense. The Patriots couldn't get anything going. I mean, Mac Jones looked like a rookie. He was sacked 3 times, and they put the pressure on him. The Bills defense did pretty consistently. So it's sort of like, okay, you know what? I'm really not. I'm sure some people are surprised by the score. I'm not. I think the Bills, feel like, they kind of felt like sort of been the redheaded stepchild in this division the last few years. So the fact that they won the AFC East for the 2nd straight year. Now they've pummeled New England. So now they go on to play Kansas City. We'll get to them in a second. But yeah, it's gonna be very interesting on that matchup too. We'll talk about it in a second. But this is sort of the matchup that, you know what, I know people thought that this would be the upset with the Patriots, but it wasn't. I mean, we figured that the Bills, especially if they could jump into a quick start, that's exactly what they did. So
yeah, we talked about this on Friday, Lakeena, with our buddy Christine Manica. I thought there was going to be an ugly close game, like I always say about your ugly scores pre-1980s football. I didn't think it was going to be the same like it was a month ago on Monday Night Football, adjusting to the weather conditions. I didn't think New England was going to run the ball 30 plus times. But as I said, it was going to come down to big plays. Who's going to make the big play? It turned out it was Buffalo. You could tell early on in that game, they set the tone. New England had to play catch up. New England does not have the weapons on offense, especially in the passing game, to outscore people. That's not how they're built. They're very good at running the football, but in terms of making the big play, they don't have those playmakers on offense yet. I think Mac Jones is eventually going to be good, but right now the bigger playmakers are on Buffalo's side of the ball.
Well, and you might be right about that too. So it's gonna get very see what they do during the off season and such, and also too, that Bills game against the Chiefs. I mean, that was a matchup we all wanted to see in the playoffs in the divisional round. So should be very interesting. So okay, we're gonna take a really quick break, but we're gonna recap the other super wild card weekend games, and Troy Aikman showing his displeasure of having to call a blowout. Speaking of that's thing in question, a strange ending to a very strange game in Dallas, and the Chiefs dominated the Steelers as we all expected. So we'll recap.
You don't say.
Right. We'll recap all that coming next to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. The Bears interviewed former Dolphins coach Brian Flores and Saints assistant GM Jeff Ireland for their vacant coach and GM jobs on Friday. Flores was let go by the Dolphins after leading Miami to a 24-25 record over 3 years. Ireland was Miami's GM from 2008 to 2013. They won the AFC East with an 11-5 record in his first season after going 1-15 in the season before. Ireland was hired by New Orleans in 2015, essentially replacing Ryan Pace when he became Chicago's GM. The Bears fired Matt Nagy and Pace following a 6-11 season. NBA this afternoon, 2:30 tip-off for the Bulls at Memphis. Chicago with a half-game lead over the Nets on top of the Eastern Conference. The Grizzlies had an 11-game winning streak snapped in a 112-85 loss Friday against the Mavericks. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Fever is the leading symptom of COVID and the flu, and the only way to reliably detect fever is with an accurate thermometer. Be vigilant and be accurate with the Exergen Temporal Scanner, proven in more than 100 clinical studies. Don't rely on non-contact thermometers. They are proven to be inaccurate and will not reliably detect a fever that might mean COVID. Be sure to seek medical advice at the first sign of fever. Learn more at Exergen.com.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on a special edition on this Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown, that's me. If you have a question or comment for us during any of our topics of today's show with less than 90 minutes remaining in our sports extravaganza today, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, let's continue to review the action from Super NFL Wildcard Weekend by reviewing the three games that took place on Sunday. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions, they had no problems as they defeated the Philadelphia Eagles 31-15. Terrific Tom Brady was stellar for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 29-37, 271 yards passing with 2 touchdowns. Their stud running back, Keyshawn Vaughn, had 17 carries, 53 yards in an early score. Mike Evans, no, not the actor from Good Times. Mike Evans, the star wide receiver for the Buccaneers. He had 9 catches, 117 yards, and they scored. Lakeena, I did not watch this game live yesterday. I didn't think it was going to get this ugly, but I'm glad I didn't watch this game live. I know you have a comment from Troy Aikman about that in just a moment, but observing from what the highlights that I saw yesterday, Tampa Bay, we talked about this on Friday, Lakeena. They have all the injuries in the world. They don't have the same personnel like they did a year ago, but the players that are left on that are on this Tampa Bay team that played in the Super Bowl last year, they made the difference. Experience versus youth was on notice yesterday. You could tell Philadelphia was nervous. I thought they were going to keep it just a little bit closer. They didn't do this. Tampa Bay set the tone, and they just cruised to a 15-point victory.
Yeah, it really wasn't close from the jump. I know that the Eagles scored 15 points late, but it was just a drag. It was all Tampa all the time. Now, they did lose a few guys due to injury. Tristan Wirfs, who is their Pro Bowl right tackle, he injured his foot, so there's a question that he may not be able to play next week against if it's Arizona, if it is Arizona, and perhaps maybe even whoever wins the Arizona Rams game. Yeah, he got hurt. Ryan Chance also got hurt. So they lost a couple of guys to injury. So it was a costly win for the Bucs. But yeah, I mean, look, Tom Brady did what he does during the playoffs. He's already broken all types of records. Yada yada yada. But of course, Rob Gronkowski had his 15th career postseason touchdown reception. That's the second most all time behind only Mr. Jerry Rice. He's also tied with Reggie Wayne for the third most receptions in postseason history. So, this wasn't even close from the jump. Like I said before, those were garbage points. 15, 31-15. No, it really wasn't that close. Jalen Hurts, if you saw after the game, apparently he was in a walking boot. His foot had been bothering him the last few weeks. Also, to Jalen Reagor, who hey, look, I know Eagles fans are upset because y'all could have had Justin Jefferson. Just saying, he had a couple of key drops and he, it overthrew some guys. Hurts did. I know some people were chanting for Gardner Minshew. I don't think it would have mattered. They just don't have the personnel right now. I'm talking about Philly, so it's yeah. I mean, it's fine. They'll learn from this experience, and then also too. I mean, like I said, it just wasn't the Eagles' day.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, as you mentioned, he threw for 258 yards, a touchdown pass and 2 interceptions. But Philadelphia, as we talked about on Friday, they needed to run the ball, and they couldn't get the running game going with any consistency because of Tampa Bay jumping up on them early on the scoreboard. Jalen Hurts was the leading rusher for Philadelphia, only 39 yards on 8 carries. Miles Sanders, 7 carries for 16 yards. This is not going to get it done. Boston Scott, he had the longest run for 34 yards. It turned out to be a late touchdown, as you mentioned. But Philadelphia just couldn't get anything going offensively. Yes, you had that stud tight end Dallas Goddard with 6 catches for 92 yards. Yeah, Devontae Smith, their rookie wide receiver, had 4 catches for 60 yards. But is nothing really jumps out at you for Philadelphia. As I mentioned, it was youth versus experience. I think if Philadelphia continues to build their team right, they'll learn from this experience. I think there'll be a thread that no one's talking about for years to come. But Tampa Bay, as you mentioned, Lakeena, they're going to host Arizona or Los Angeles Rams next week. I'm really more concerned about them. We talked about it on our last show on Friday. The injuries are starting to mount out to him. The guys that were hurt yesterday, if you can't get them back for next Sunday, it's really going to be a problem.
It is going to be huge, and we'll see. I mean, it hasn't caught to them yet, but like I said before, they lost a couple of their top alignment to injuries, and we'll see if they'll be able to play next week. But it's going to be tough. Now, Troy Aikman made some interesting comments. Of course, him and Joe Buck did the game. And during the fourth quarter, he was showing his displeasure very subtly, I'll say, when Joe was promoting the next game coming up, which was San Fran and the 49ers. Of course, the rich history between them, goes all the way back to the 70s. Of course, Aikman played on those teams. They would face each other twice for the NFC championship, but he wasn't very happy and threw a little shade, I would say, at his bosses. But I think he also has to remember too that the way they set it up and how the games were picked. NBC had first pick because they had 2 games over the weekend. Then it was I believe it was CBS. Now, of course, also remember CBS also had the Nickelodeon game for the second straight year. And look, if you're CBS or Viacom, they're both owned by Viacom. If you're going to pick a game that's probably going to be close between 2 rivals, not just in the division, NFC East rivals and NFC West rivals to say and such and all that. That's gonna be a close game, or you're gonna pick a game that's probably gonna be a laugher, which it ended up being. So if you're CBS, I think you made the right decision picking that game. So, but that's how it happened. I'm sure he had a little talk with his bosses about that, but it really wasn't in their control. So.
Yes, one, I'm surprised he wasn't threatened to drop a curse word. And number 2, Matt Nagy wasn't around, so it couldn't get him that angry.
Right? Yeah. I heard people were saying, "Oh my God, I thought he was going to swear." Like, okay, y'all haven't seen him do Bears games the last couple of years because
right.
That's nothing. That was
exactly
nothing. That was nothing. Yes, there was some questionable play calling and such, but I think it was more nerves and also too inexperience. The Bears were just the Bears. So he was on the verge of course at least 3 times. I counted for the last couple of years, but yeah, I mean, it really wasn't in their control. Isn't their control. So there was really nothing they could have done.
Yeah. You're listening to Second City Sports on a special Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday special, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Browns. We continue to review NFL Super Wild Card Weekend with the 3 games that took place yesterday on Sunday. Let's go down to Dallas, Texas. It was the Dallas Cowboys dropping 1 to the San Francisco 49ers by the score of 23-17. Dak Prescott for Dallas was 23 of 43, 254 yards and a touchdown. Running back Elijah Mitchell did his thing for the 49ers, 27 carries, 96 yards in the early first quarter touchdown. The Dallas stud tight end, Mr. Dalton Schultz had 7 catches for 89 yards. Lakeena, this was the only game I watched from beginning to end. You could tell that San Francisco, especially defensively, they set the tone. Offensively, I know Jimmy Garoppolo had a turnover late, but Jimmy Garoppolo did not make any mistakes. Kyle Shanahan, their head coach, stuck to the game plan, run the football, wear down that Dallas Cowboys defense. As I said on Friday, that's why I picked San Francisco to win. And look what happened. They ran the ball. The defense, even though they got tired late, they controlled the game for at least the first 3 quarters. And you could tell that this was going to be a long day for the Dallas Cowboys. And what did I say on Friday about Dallas? They had to run the ball with some consistency. Unless you saw something that I didn't see that happening for the Dallas Cowboys offense. We talked about this all year, Lakeena, that Dak Prescott was back, but he needs help, and he didn't get much of that yesterday.
He could only carry the ball 12 times, I should say, for
Mm.
31 yards. I mean, I don't know what Kellen Moore's plan was, but it's sort of one of those things. You're like, okay, what's you have a top tier running back who's been an all pro, who is a Pro Bowler too. Why didn't you give him the ball more? And I think that's what also cost the 49 the Cowboys to say. Also, the 49ers, they try to give that game away like so many times. You thought that maybe Garoppolo had the first down. It turns out he didn't. Debo Samuel, if you listen to his comments after the game, he thought he had the first down too. So that was just a crazy. Those last like 5 minutes were crazy. And of course, Dak, they did a quarterback draw. He got the first down, but unfortunately, they didn't have timeouts left, and he tried to set the ball up. But if you remember the rule that the field judge has to do that, so that
Exactly.
cost them the time. And I know Cowboys fans were upset, but that's just the rule. You had plenty of chances yourself to get in the game. Maybe if you had had that slow start in the beginning, you probably would not have been in that situation. So this is one of those crazy games, of course, a crazy ending, and would end in that weird fashion. So, definitely the weirdest game of the weekend. I'm absolutely.
And what was up with all those penalties for the Cowboys shooting themselves in the foot, with all the false starts? And of course, let's not forget about the fake punt, which was converted by anger early in that first half. And the Cowboys tried that again to spike the ball quickly. But like you said, the field judge has to touch the ball first. And it's all about situational football, knowing the rules. And the Cowboys cannot blame nobody but themselves. They were in that game late. As you mentioned, the 49ers tried to get that away, but Dallas just could not execute down the stretch, and they didn't do what they needed to do to win the ball game. It's just, and shooting yourself in the foot with stupid penalties and miscommunication. It's just like you cannot blame the refs for that. I know that Tony Romo explained the rule perfectly at the end of that game. Him and Jim Nantz were both shocked at what happened, but I thought that Tony Romo explained the rules perfectly. It wasn't the refs' fault. It was Dallas's fault.
Yeah, and
That's
also
what happens when you try to play catch up and try to get away with one, and you got caught with your hands in the cookie jar.
14 penalties isn't gonna win you a lot of games, and there were a couple of penalties late in that game, and like you said, not knowing the rules, situational football, as they say, and that then apparently they weren't aware that, I guess, Dak forgot the rule that, look, the village just has to touch the ball first. You can't touch the ball. That does not stop the clock. You can't clock it like that. And by the time they did, got to it, and he was able to clock it, but the timer ran out. So, I know Cowboys fans. I know Stephen A. Smith, who was the resident Cowboys fan, was actually pretty tamed. He actually was a little bit
and that's
mellow.
air quotes.
Yeah, mellow, if you can believe that. And I know Cowboys fans were mystified and were ticked, but know the rules. Know where you are. I mean, why were you going running a quarterback draw when you had no timeouts left? The whole thing was just silly, and of course it was another weird ending to a great rivalry. So with slime all over the place.
Gooey slime, yay! Take a look at the numbers from the 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo, 16 of 25, 172 yards passing. Late interception. His quarterback rating was a 67.4. As I mentioned, in the running department for the 49ers, Elijah Mitchell, 1 touchdown off of 27 carries for 96 yards. Debo Samuel, as you mentioned, 10 carries, 72 yards in the first quarter touchdown. In the receiving department, Brandon Ayuk had 5 catches for 66 yards. Debo Samuel, 3 catches for 38 yards. And Juwan Jennings, who's been stepping up for them as a slot receiver the last few weeks, he had 3 catches for 29 yards. George Kittle, their tight end, had 1 catch for 18 yards, but you'll take that because other guys around them stepped up. And as I mentioned, the San Francisco 49ers defense stepped up big time. They sacked Dak Prescott not once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. They sacked Dak 5 times, and they had an early interception off Prescott as well. So a good hard-fought win for the 49ers, even though they almost gave that game away late.
Yeah, and also too, the defense actually stepped up without Fred Warner, who I think hurt his ankle, and Nick Bosa, who got a concussion. So we'll see if they can come back for the game against Green Bay next weekend. But yeah, I mean, they did try to give that game away. I mean, I don't know what Kyle Shanahan was thinking, with some of the play calling, but I guess, look, it's whether you win or lose. I mean, it doesn't as long as you don't give the game away. It's not about style points, just win, as they say, and that's what they did. So look, you'll take it if you're a 49ers fan and you have a pretty tough task going to Lambeau facing Green Bay. Again, we'll preview that game in this, on Friday. But
Mhm.
look, seeing the guys step up, with the even core course, Deebo Samuel is a stud. He can run, he can pass if you want him to. He can also catch the ball. So he's definitely a one-stop shop, and you're lucky to have him if you're a 49ers fan.
Yeah, a couple other statistics that stood out to me from Dallas in this game. As I said, who's going to be the guy to step up in the place of Michael Gallup? He had Amari Cooper, 6 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. Cedric Wilson had 5 catches for 62 yards. He had a key drop late in that ball game. CeeDee Lamb, who was hurt, he only had 1 catch for 21 yards. As I mentioned, Lakeena, in the running back department, there was no commitment to the run, and I believe that was one of the reasons why outside of the dumb penalties that the Dallas Cowboys are sitting at home today. Also, key number 3 for Dallas, their defense, no
Mm-hmm.
sacks on Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, where was Randy Gregory? I mean, where was the pressure on Garoppolo? I mean, where
Hmm.
Leighton Vander Esch, I mean, he did what he could, but he couldn't get to Garoppolo. They actually ran the
Hmm.
ball. I know Michael Parsons got banged up. So Trayvon Diggs, just couldn't get the pressure on some of those wide receivers for the 49ers. So it just unfortunate for the Dallas. They picked the wrong time. The defense, I should say, they picked the wrong time to have their worst game of the season. So that's sort of like now if you're Jerry Jones, you're sort of like thinking what else can I do? But hey, it is what it is.
In the last game on the Sunday schedule from last night, it was the Kansas City Chiefs dominating
Skip,
the
skip,
Pittsburgh
skip.
Steelers.
We can skip that one because
Well,
I I
we
know we
still
still
had
have
to,
to talk about it, but
yeah.
again, this is like I know when Derek Watt had that. Oh, TJ Watt, I should say, had that scoop and score. You thought, okay, maybe we may have an upset here, but the Chiefs came right back and scored 21 unanswered points, and that started the blowout. Pat Mahomes have threw for 5 touchdowns. Even
Mhm.
Travis Kelce actually passed one as well, also catching one. The defense, they just and also too, the Steelers offense continues mm, continue to struggle. Now, Big Ben did throw for 2 touchdowns, but sort of like garbage touchdowns, as they say. They couldn't get the running game going with Najee Harris, and it was just, I know the Steelers probably had no business getting into the playoffs. I'm sure people will say that, but you know, the Chiefs again. I don't know what to think of the Chiefs. I mean, like I said, they kind of backed in. I don't want to say they backed into the top one of the top 2 seeds, but going into the playoffs, they play Buffalo. I'm looking forward to that game. Can't wait for that. But again, I'm not impressed by the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'll give you another reason why you're not supposed to be impressed by the Chiefs' performance last night. They only had 106 yards total as in the rushing department. Of course, they didn't
Hmm.
need it because Patrick Mahomes was throwing the ball all over the
Right.
place for a total of 404 yards and 5 touchdown passes. Now, Travis Kelce, he was the standout player in my mind. He had 5 catches, 108 yards, threw for a touchdown, and caught a touchdown pass as well. Lakeena, I think that the Chiefs played down to the competition, and like you said, they'll face Buffalo next week. But Pittsburgh, as we mentioned, Lakeena, they needed to run the ball, as I said on our last episode. They needed to run the ball. They did get the turnover early, as I predicted,
Hmm.
Lakeena. They need to get to Patrick Mahomes early. They created a turnover, scored the first 7 points in the game, but uh, call me crazy, but there was no sense of urgency afterwards. I didn't think it was going to be as ugly as the last time these two teams met a couple weeks ago, but it, Pittsburgh is not there.
No,
And
they're
in Kansas City, they really didn't have to do too much. So they got away with one. They did what they had to do to win. That's what we saw happen.
Yeah, basically, and like you said, Sid, I mean, it's sort of one of those things where I know people are going to say that the Steelers had no business making the playoffs. Well, hey, blame the Chargers for that, folks. But that's that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I mean, a tough way for Big Ben to go out. I know this is not how he wanted to go out, but they just did not look good. And also the defense, like I said before, Watt had that scoop and score. You thought that maybe TJ Watt had that scoop and score. You think that maybe that could have been a start or something, but
Hmm.
unfortunately, it really didn't, lead to anything major after that. So the Chiefs were throwing the ball all over the place. Let's get to this game tonight. That'll be the Monday night. This will be simulcast on both ESPN and ABC. Arizona and the Los Angeles Rams. This will be a lot of fun. This is going to be the third meeting between these two teams. They split the first two meetings. The Rams have had some issues in their secondary. They got some injury issues there. I know I picked the Rams, but I have, but this is before all this stuff with the injuries and such, and I'm a little worried because if they could get, Kyler Murray, this is going to be his first sort of, go at it in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how he responds. Matt Stafford, it's going to be his first, go at it in the Rams uniform. He hasn't been in the playoffs in years. So it's going to be very interesting to see how, both these teams sort of, start off, which team's going to get the jump early, and JJ Watt is supposed to be back, tonight. So this is probably where it gets very interesting.
Yes, I picked the Rams as well. First of all, Eric Weddle was signed off the street. He hasn't played in 3 years, so he's going to help out. He's going to help out the Rams in the secondary. Outside of Jalen Ramsey, Lakeena, that Rams secondary has been hot butter on the breakfast toast all year.
Hot garbage. Hot butter on the breakfast toast.
There you go.
Or something.
Yeah, but on the defensive line, who's going to step up outside of Aaron Donald? Leonard Floyd, the former Chicago Bear, he was rewarded with a contract extension in the offseason. I want to see what he does tonight against Kyler Murray in the Arizona offense. But on the flip side, for the Rams offensively, you will hope they will be more committed to running the football, especially with the Cam Akers back. I know that they have Sony Michel, the former New England Patriot. You'll have to take the pressure off of Matthew Stafford. I know this is what they brought him to Los Angeles for, to get the Rams over the next hump, get him over the hump and go to the next level. But I think, let's see if Sean McVay, the quote-unquote boy genius offensively for the Rams, their head coach, let's see if he can have a balanced game plan tonight, because if he doesn't, they're going to be in trouble. I think they're still better than Arizona. But if Sean McVay, he has to be careful how he calls this game tonight, because if he doesn't, they're going to be in trouble.
One, and if you're Arizona, do you try to make establish everything early by going for the run? I think that let James Conner, eat up yards. Chase Edmonds, they're both back. You got a pretty good tandem there. Maybe perhaps try that, or if you're gonna maybe run the ball a little bit more, or are you gonna try to go for the pass? I mean, it's going to get also the defense too. I know Aaron Donald's going to be, chasing because he sacked Kyler a couple of times in their second meeting. So if you're Arizona, you're thinking, okay, what can we do to kind of establish, make pace for the game early. So I think if you're this definitely could come down to perhaps maybe a last possession perhaps. So. Like I said, this should be a very fun game. It's probably going to be the game of the weekend, I feel like, because you got two divisional opponents facing each other. So I think that should help. They know each other's, idiosyncrasies. And I feel like this could get, like I said, this could come down to maybe perhaps a field goal, or whoever has the ball last wins. But yeah, it's going to depend on who established what they wanted, what their game plan will be early.
Also, too, I want to see how Odell Beckham Jr. will be used in the game plan. This is his first playoff trip to the playoffs in a few years. I believe since 2015 with the New York Football Giants. I want to see how Sean McVay involves him in the game plan as well, because he was brought to stabilize the wide receiving corps, especially after the injury to Robert Woods. And so I want to see how he steps up tonight. But remember, Lakeena, I don't like both these teams because the way they both of them finished up the season. Of course, the Rams backed into a division title, and the Cardinals has been struggling for the last 2 months. It's almost picking the lesser of two evils, but I think the Rams have just a little bit more talent on the roster than the Cardinals. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins, the Cardinals star wide receiver, I don't think he's going to play tonight, and so it takes a weapon away from Kyler Murray. Let's see if Chase Edmonds is going to see if he can run the ball with some consistency. I think it's going to come down just to execution, Lakeena. And I think the Rams will be able to do that there at home. I picked them to win on Friday. I'll pick them to win again. Still pick them to win tonight.
Yeah, I know I picked the Rams too, but I feel like if Arizona does pull off the quote unquote upset, I mean these two teams are pretty much even. So I kind of feel like I'm sure they are going to probably run the ball a little bit more. Arizona will, just to kind of compensate for the fact that it looks like Hopkins won't play tonight. But you never know. I mean, like I said before, look, weird things have happened in these, super wild card weekends. We saw what the 49ers Cowboys game yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see if that's going to become the case with this game here. But again, we'll see. Like I said, it could come down to maybe whoever has the ball last, could end up winning it. And look, I don't know if I would say lesser of two evils, but like I said, like I've been saying the last couple of weeks, once you're in the dance, then you have a shot, and these two teams have a shot. So we'll see what happens tonight.
Yeah, one more time, tonight's Rams Cardinals game can be seen on ESPN and ABC at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Before we close out hour number one, we'll give you the schedule for next weekend in the NFL playoffs as they move on to the divisional round. Next Saturday, the Bengals and Titans will play at Tennessee. That's at 3:30 p.m. on CBS, followed by the 49ers at Packers at 7:15 on Fox. That's your schedule for next Saturday. Next Sunday, the winner of the Rams Cardinals will travel to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. That's at 2 o'clock on Sunday. That's on NBC. And at 5:30 on CBS on Sunday, we'll have the Bills and the Chiefs, a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. So that's your schedule for the NFL divisional round that will kick off next Saturday afternoon. Hour number one in the books. Hour number two straight ahead as we'll get into the Bulls. They had their own version of the Boston Tea Party disaster against the Celtics last Saturday night. They have a game today on national television against the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll preview that. Of course, we'll get into the best and worst of the NBA from the weekend, and we'll get into some college basketball as well, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. You're listening to a special Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday edition of Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. The Bears interviewed former Dolphins coach Brian Flores and Saints assistant GM Jeff Ireland for their vacant coach and GM jobs on Friday. Flores was let go by the Dolphins after leading Miami to a 24-25 record over 3 years. Ireland was Miami's GM from 2008 to 2013. They won the AFC East with an 11-5 record in his first season after going 1-15 in the season before. Ireland was hired by New Orleans in 2015, essentially replacing Ryan Pace when he became Chicago's GM. The Bears fired Matt Nagy and Pace following a 6-11 season. NBA this afternoon, 2:30 tip-off for the Bulls at Memphis. Chicago with a half-game lead over the Nets on top of the Eastern Conference. The Grizzlies had an 11-game winning streak snapped in a 112-85 loss Friday against the Mavericks. For lightning-fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Fever is the leading symptom of COVID and the flu, and the only way to reliably detect fever is with an accurate thermometer. Be vigilant and be accurate with the Exergen Temporal Scanner, proven in more than 100 clinical studies. Don't rely on non-contact thermometers. They are proven to be inaccurate and will not reliably detect a fever that might mean COVID. Be sure to seek medical advice at the first sign of fever. Learn more at Exergen.com.
Welcome back to hour number two of Second City Sports on the special Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Lakeena McGee on the Twitter and at Lakeena_McGee on the IG.
If you have a question or comment for us during this 60-minute edition that's remaining in our show today, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's on Sports Zone Chicago on Facebook or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, let's kick off hour number two of this program discussing the Chicago Bulls, and we'll get to the rest of the NBA in just a couple of moments. Lakeena, the Bulls, their record is at 27-14 on the season. We'll give you our preview of the game later on today against the Memphis Grizzlies coming up. But Lakeena, the Bulls are at a crossroads. I told you that I didn't like the way this team has been playing 2 out of the last 3 games, minus the Detroit victory a week ago tomorrow. But they lost to the Warriors ugly on Friday. Zach LaVine injured his knee. Now, the good news is there's no structural damage here, so he's not going to miss that many games as of right now. I doubted that he plays today at Memphis. He didn't play on Saturday at Boston. We'll review the game in just a second. But Lakeena, the Bulls had their second major crossroads of the season. I know they were dealing with COVID just like everybody else, but now it seems like the more things have thrown at them, we're going to see what this team is made of. Now, last Saturday, they lost a 6-point lead with 2 minutes left to go. Boston came back, won the game with 2 free throws. As the Boston Celtics defeated the Bulls 114 to 112. Now, I know the old saying goes that there's some silver lining in a bad situation. It turned out to be that in that case for the Chicago Bulls. Nikolai Vucevic, I know many Bulls fans use him as a punching bag. In 35 minutes of action, Vucevic had 27 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. He was 12 for 20 overall in shooting, so he wasn't the problem last Saturday. Ayo Dosunmu in his first start of the season, he played 40 minutes, had 21 points, 10 rebounds. 4 rebounds and 10 assists. I like the way he ran the team on Saturday, Lakeena. As I said before, during the early part of the season when Kobe White was still on the shelf, any experience that Ayo got is going to be used, is going to be helpful to this team later on in the season, and that's what we're seeing right now. And speaking of Kobe White, he's starting in place of the injured Zach LaVine. In 39 minutes of action, he had 19 points, including 5 of 10 shooting from 3-point range.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if Zach plays, they win that game. But let's keep it 100 here. And look, I know Bulls fans want to rag on Vucevic. I mean, look, Vucevic wasn't the issue. Yes, he probably could have more rebounds, but he scored 27 points. And the Bulls are still shorthanded. I mean, Caruso is out. Devontae Graham's been out. The good news for both of them, they are going to be playing for the Windy City Bulls in their game tonight. So that should definitely help them. Hopefully they'll be back before the week is out. And look, if Zach has to sit a couple of games, to nurse that knee, then so be it. I mean, I would rather him be Javonte Green, I should say. So I'm gonna, Devontae Graham, I should say. So I'm gonna hold off on any takes. I mean, they're still number 1 in the East. I'm not worried about them right now. And look, they're still shorthanded. The Bulls are, so they've been able to respond. They could, like I said, they could have won that game, if certain things didn't happen. As far as the scheduling, I mean, look, they got a tough one on later on in a little bit against the Grizzlies. I know the Grizzlies have been on a roll lately with John Morant and those other guys as they're being called. Now, as for the Bulls, if they 3-game losing streak, okay, whatever. I mean, it's a long season. Folks need to just chill. All right, so I get so miffed at Bulls fans for every little thing. I mean, they're being and look, these guys are playing shorthanded right now, and I feel like we're at that point. Okay, look, we're only about halfway through the season, so I'm not gonna rage against. Oh well, they haven't. How dare they? They haven't. They haven't played their best. I know. Look, they got their butts kicked by Golden State. Okay, they had a lot to prove. They got their butts kicked by Milwaukee. They didn't play very well in their last couple of games. Besides that Detroit game. I'm not gonna rage. Look, we're kind of in the middle of the season here. I'd rather have all these problems now and get it out of the way, whereas later this season go into the playoffs. Hopefully everybody will be fresh for the playoffs. And then look, we'll see if they make any moves. I know they signed Malcolm Hill to a 2-way deal. We'll see how that works out. Could they have a bigger, could AK and Eversley be playing a bigger move? Look, they always move in silence, as they say. The bad people move in silence. So we'll see what trick they have up their sleeve. So I'm not gonna go freak out oh my god. Thankfully, Levine's injury isn't serious. Like I say, if he has to sit maybe a week or 2, then so be it. But
yeah,
look, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lakeena. As far as Zach LaVine, thank goodness I know that there's no further damage to his knee. That's the same knee that he had surgery on a few years ago with his torn ACL. prior to him being traded here to Chicago. But Lakeena, it's all about again especially your stars healthy, and especially after the All-Star break to make this run towards the playoffs and hopefully go far. But you got to have your stars healthy. Like you said, like, if he's going to miss the next week or two, so be it. I'd rather you do it now than to, heaven forbid, that this happens towards the end of the regular season. Bulls fans, are you worried about this team? This team has lost 3 out of their last 4 games. Or do you have Lakeena's attitude? Everything's going to be just fine. Just weigh this out and continue to still play at 500 ball and still remain at the top of the conference. We want to hear your answers. You can go to facebook.com/SportsZone Chicago, or you can go to Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube, type in your questions and comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, as a fan, I was frustrated what happened on Saturday. The Bulls should have won that game, but I was proud of them that the way they played, especially after they get embarrassed against the Golden State Warriors last Friday. Remember, Lakeena, I expected that performance against Golden State. That didn't happen, but for the Bulls to play like the way they did, despite the ending on Saturday night, you had to give Billy Donovan, their head coach, credit on that, especially on the back-to-back.
Well, yeah, and also too, they could have, went over, folded up, and just after what happened with Golden State, they didn't. So they should definitely be committed. I think that's akin to their head coach, Billy Donovan. I think he's sort of like a scrapper. He kind of played that way when he was at Providence. So this is sort of like an epitome of what his attitude is. And look, we'll see what happens. Look, it's going to be tough, that game. This game they have to coming up in a little bit against the Grizzlies, because, like I said before, John Morant's been playing very well. The team, they were actually playing pretty well even before when he was hurt. So again, they've been playing pretty well lately, and look, we'll see how they respond. I mean, look, we've been saying this before. Lonzo Ball is still, getting over the effects of COVID, so hopefully, we'll see him make a breakthrough today, I should say. And look, I mean, someone's gonna have to try to stop John Morant. I mean, also happy 22nd birthday to Ao, by the way. He just turned 22 today, and I'm sure he'll probably be tasked with having to guard, John Morant, and we'll see how. Well, that'll be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, today's game will take place from Memphis at 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can watch that game on TNT. Lakeena, what are you looking forward to today's game against Memphis? What are you looking for the Bulls to do, especially offensively? You mentioned how are they going to stop John Morant. Good luck with that, especially without Zach LaVine. But what are you looking forward to offensively for the Chicago Bulls for today's game?
I look forward to a matchup between Steven Adams and Vooch. That should be a fun one between those two. You got 2 big men playing, and inside there. That should be a fun matchup. Like I said before, who's going to get the task? I mean, will they be taking turns? Between Lonzo and Ao. I mean, look. I mean, it's going to get pretty interesting. Although it's like I said before, I think this could be one of those games where I'm not going to say this game's going to be a litmus test, because who knows if Memphis will still be, up there by the time we get into after the All-Star break. That people might, teams might start figuring them out, maybe. But, like I said before, if they can, try to maybe tame Morant, that's going to be a tough task, especially without Zach. But if they can try, they can kind of kind of be a force. I think they're pretty similar in their defensive styles as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna get interesting to see. Look, I'm sure the Bulls are going to fight. I'm sure the Bulls are going to look, if they end up winning, hey, cool. That's going to be the big upset. And I know JJ Redick got some, flack for some, posts. He said, "Oh, well, the Bulls are only the 5th best team." I'd be okay with that if I were the Bulls, because, like I said, you know what? No one's going to expect them to really do anything. So I say, use that as a rallying cry.
What I'm looking forward to today's game is who's going to help out DeMar DeRozan in the scoring department. Who's going to be his Batman? You mentioned Vucevic. He had 27 points on Saturday at Boston in the loss. Can he keep that up today, especially going against Steven Adams, who's a scrapper throughout his whole career, especially with OKC? He's doing a great job for Memphis so far this year. So I'm looking forward to that matchup as well. How is the growth of Ayo Dosunmu? Will it continue to trend upward? Especially he has to be the primary defender on John Morant. Will that continue today? And also, too, Kobe White, will he continue his hot streak of shooting? Because they'll definitely need it today, especially without Zach LaVine.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna have to step up, absolutely. And also, like I said before, I mean, like I said, John Morant's really the only player that people know. So on that roster. So I think the other guys we'll see how they guard some of the other guys that are on that team, because I'm sure the Grizzlies are not going to be in a very good mood because of the way they got pummeled by the Mavs a couple of days ago. So we'll see how they respond. I mean, it like I said before, I mean, Desmond Bain and Jaren Jackson Jr. and all those guys. I mean, I know some people may not know those are not household names, but they're the main reasons why Memphis is where they are right now. So like I said, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do to today against the Bulls. I mean, we'll see. I mean, these two team styles can be new or pretty similar, so it'll like I said, it could be a lot of scoring.
Yes, it'll be a lot of scoring. We'll see what happens. Once again, that game tips off at 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time today. You can watch that game on TNT. Lakeena, let's get to some news and notes from over the weekend in the National Basketball Association. The Brooklyn Nets are going through the same thing as the Chicago Bulls right now in terms of injuries. The Nets did beat the New Orleans Pelicans 120-105 on Saturday, but that wasn't the big story. The big story was that Kevin Durant injured his knee. He's going to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks, almost like the same injury he had with Golden State during to his second to last during the 2018 championship season. So there was some similarities there. And so Durant will be out for the next month. Of course, Kyrie Irving is back. Blake Griffin still being played in a part-time role. You still have James Harden. Lakeena, I think that the Brooklyn Nets will survive this. It's not going to be easy, but I think they'll survive.
Yeah, like I said before, it's going to be interesting to see how Kyrie's probably gonna have to step up. Harden's gonna have to step up, and a couple of the other guys. We may see more Patty Mills. So I think, I think the Nets are gonna be just fine with KDL. We'll see how. I'm sure he's gonna be reevaluated at the end of the month. End of that 4 week period. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, he can come back. In that 4 to 6 week span. That way, they won't have to miss him too much. But I mean, right now, I mean, I know they've kind of had their struggles, but we'll see. I mean, they've had to deal with one of their both and two of the guys out before. They've been doing okay. I mean, they've lost a couple of games here and there, but they've been able to kind of stay afloat. So we'll see what we can do the same with KD being out.
Yeah, staying with the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers escaped with a 107-102 win last Saturday against the Oklahoma City Thunder on the road. And quietly, the Philadelphia 76ers are getting back on track despite the Ben Simmons rumors. Not so much rumors. They defeated the Miami Heat 109-98. I did get a chance to watch some of that live. We mentioned, Lakeena, about the Miami Heat. They're not going to go out quietly. They're like the Memphis Grizzlies, who we just talked about a few moments ago. Outside of Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, they don't have the quote-unquote sexy names, but they have players that fill in their roles nicely. And you have to give Heat head coach Eric Spoelstra all the credit in the world for that. On the flip side, for Philadelphia, they're starting to turn around here. I know Tobias Harris has been mentioned in some trade rumors as well. He's the Batman to Joel Embiid's Robin. So those guys have picked it up as well. So Philadelphia and Miami, it was a good matchup on Saturday. Those two teams, if they get it going, it's going to be really tough in the Eastern Conference come playoff time.
Yeah, and Seth Curry, not Steph's younger brother. Seth Curry had 21.
SETH.
So he definitely is has stepped up here a little bit as well. And I think Embiid sort of making a case for perhaps maybe being in the MVP discussion. He had a double. So it's it's gonna be interesting. I know that Jimmy's coming back from injury. That's why he only scored like 8 points or something like that. So during that game, so I think that's kind of had a lot to do with that as well. So I think Philly's sort of kind of creeping up a little bit. We'll see what they can do. They got a pretty tough schedule in these next couple of weeks, so we'll see how they unfold. I mean, can they perhaps maybe get into that top 3 or 4 seed in the East? I mean, we'll see. Should be a fun, interesting one there. Also to the Nuggets. I mean, unfortunately, the Lakers. Just when you thought that maybe the Lakers were starting to figure it out, they get pummeled by Denver by 37 points. Jokic had his 8 triple-double, and that led the way for the Nuggets as they just hammered the Lakers. I know LeBron tweeted something over the weekend saying that he'll try to play better. I don't know what else can he say. I mean, AD is still out. He might be out another week or two. Dwight Howard, he's doing what he can, but and also to the rest of the supporting cast is he's not getting any help. And look, if you're LeBron, you just turned 37 a couple of weeks back. You need more help, and I know Carmelo's has some injury issues too, so
Mhm.
he's not playing right now. It's just sort of an SOS for the Lakers.
Yeah, I don't know what you could do at this point if you're a GM Rob Pelinka. I know some people say fire Frank Vogel, but if firing your head coach is going to solve the issue, I don't think so. You need to make changes to the roster, but your salary cap strapped. What what will you do? This is the team that LeBron James wanted. This is what you have now.
Yeah, I don't look. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, what can the Lakers do at this point? This late in the season, I don't think they can't trade anybody, but yeah, I don't know what else can they do. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. Now, as for yesterday's matchups, Phoenix, beat Detroit pretty easily by 27 points. Devin Booker had 30 points, leading the way for the Suns. Also, too, Utah, defeated Denver, pretty easily. I think people were kind of shocked by the score. I think the people thought the score was going to be pretty close. Donovan Mitchell had 31 points, and with everything else. I mean, that's sort of been kind of like the thing. He's sort of leading the way for the Nuggets. Bogdanovich had 21. Jokic, I should say, the reigning MVP, had another triple double, but it wasn't enough. As the Jazz were able to kind of just tame the Nuggets by 23. I actually got a chance to watch a little bit of this game via this lovely device here, and it was interesting that it was actually the fourth quarter. It was actually pretty close, but 34 points, they outscored the Nuggets by 20, and the Jazz were able to pull away late.
Yeah, I watched some of this game too live instead of the Kansas City Pittsburgh football game. But we mentioned the last few years, Lakeena, on this show. The Jazz, they're a very good regular season team, but can you show up during the playoffs? That's the question. I still believe that on the flip side, different Nuggets will be fine, but they got to get some of their key guys back, and I think they'll be okay. I know the Warriors lost by 20 last night to the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you're a Warriors fan, you're not worried about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know that Draymond's going to be out another couple of weeks, that calf injury. Clay's starting to kind of, get into a rhythm again, so it might be a couple of weeks for him. I know Steph has been kind of been up and down lately too. So, I know Warriors fans are kind of freaking out about, oh my God, they're struggling. They're struggling a little bit, but you know what? Like it's par for the course as opposed to the long season, even with teams like the Warriors and such. So I wouldn't be too worried right now if you're a Warriors fan. You're only about halfway through the season, and it's look there's still a lot of basketball left to be played. So I think people who are freaking out about, yeah, the Warriors have been struggling, but there's really no need to panic.
You're listening to Second City Sports Live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago on a special Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown as we continue to talk about the NBA in general. Lakeena, since this is a holiday today, there's games going on across the country. Just to give you a couple of updated scores. Early in the fourth quarter, the Boston Celtics lead the New Orleans Pelicans 75-69. At halftime at MSG, the Charlotte Hornets lead the Knicks by 18, 62-44. And just underway, the Washington Wizards are leading the Philadelphia 76ers 15-9. Now, the rest of the MLK schedule for the NBA goes as this. The Cleveland Cavaliers will host the injury Brooklyn Nets at 2 o'clock. Of course, the Bulls and the Grizzlies will play at 2:30 on TNT. At the same time, at 2:30, we'll have the Pacers traveling to LA to take on the Clippers. At 5 p.m., as part of the TNT MLK Day doubleheader, we'll have Milwaukee at Atlanta, the rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals. At 6 p.m., we'll have Portland at Orlando. At 6:30, the Raptors will travel to Miami to take on the Heat. At 7:30, we'll have Dallas hosting the OKC Thunder. At 7:30, we'll have San Antonio hosting the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix continuing their road trip. And at 9:30 p.m. on NBA TV, we'll have the Utah Jazz playing the second of their back-to-back. They're at Los Angeles to take on the Lakers.
That should be a fun game too, even despite the Lakers still being pretty short-handed. Tuesday for tomorrow's games, you got Minnesota and New York. These are both NBA TV doubleheaders, and also Detroit and Golden State. We'll see how Golden State looks. I know that we'll see if Klay Thompson will be able to play tomorrow. I know New York, they've been a little bit up and down. They've kind of been a little bit on the road, but kind of like, take a couple of steps back. So we'll see. That should be a fun one on NBA TV to start Wednesday's games. You got Philadelphia hosting Orlando, Brooklyn, starting off their second game without KD, and Washington. That should be a fun one. Minnesota and Atlanta, Charlotte and Boston. That's the first game of the ESPN doubleheader. Portland.
That should be a good one.
Yeah, and Portland continues their East Coast trip, playing against Miami at 6:30. And of course, Chicago hosting Cleveland at 7 o'clock. Memphis at Milwaukee. That should be a fun one as well.
I'm really looking forward to that one.
That should be a lot of fun. And Toronto and Dallas at 7:30.
And continuing the Wednesday schedule, the Thunder will take on the Spurs at 7:30, the Rockets and the Jazz at 8 o'clock. Clippers and Nuggets will wrap up the ESPN Wednesday night doubleheader at 9 o'clock. The Pistons will visit Sacramento at 9 o'clock, and then at 9:30 you will have the Pacers facing off against the Los Angeles Lakers. Could it get worse for the Lakers? Could it, losing to the Pacers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like, I don't know, could it be worse for the Pacers? I mean, with all the rumors going on about, what do they want? They want 2 first-round picks for Levert. I mean, it's just like, you're not going to get 2 first-rounders. I mean, that's just absurd. So I don't know what they're doing over there in Indiana. I know they want to, wipe the slate clean and start over. If you're Rick Carlisle, you're thinking like, what's going on here? But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I feel like, there might be some taming of demands, if you will, for the Pacers. But we'll see. Now, Thursday's matchups, you got New Orleans and New York, and you got the first game of the TNT doubleheader. It'll be Phoenix and Dallas.
In the second game of that TNT doubleheader, speaking of the Pacers, as they continue their West Coast road trip, they'll have the honor of traveling to Chase Center to take on Golden State Warriors at 9 o'clock. So that's your schedule for the NBA for this upcoming week. Lakeena, let's get into a couple of teams that you've been impressed with or you want to see improve. For me, the Golden State Warriors, even though they've been up and down lately, I know they beat the Bulls last Friday night. The night before, they got embarrassed at Milwaukee on national television. They lost to Minnesota last night. But as I said before, Lakeena, all season long, when Klay Thompson comes back, I know he's not going to play in back-to-back games to start off to get his conditioning back. I still like this Warriors team. You still have depth. Of course, they're led by Steph Curry. Draymond Green's still injured right now, so you have to wait till he gets back. You have Jordan Poole. You still have Gary Payton II. Those role players have stepped up big time for this Warriors team all year long. As soon as Klay Thompson gets his conditioning back, this team is really going to be dangerous. I'm not calling them champions yet, but they're going to cause a couple of problems for a couple of teams come playoff time.
I really agree with you on that. And like I said before, this should be an interesting one going to the playoffs. I would say Phoenix is probably the team that I'm impressed with. I mean, I think they've shown that this wasn't a fluke last year. The fact that they made the NBA Finals. I know some people were like, they kind of benefited from some of the the injuries on the top, some of the top teams in the West. They're showing you that no, you know what, this team's actually pretty good. Of course, you got Book. Also, too, when he was gone, he was banged up with an ankle injury. They stepped up. The Suns did. They won like 16 in a row. So going into the end of last year. So they're 33-9 right now. They're right up there in the top 3 in the West. The CP3 has looked really good. Of course, at his age. Of course, Booker, and they're also getting DeAndre Ayton. Also, they're getting great contributions from their supporting cast as well. So. You got it, and also too, I think Monty Williams should be considered for Coach of the Year honors. And look, I know there's some stuff going on with the ownership. I know there's still some things that are some things that came out, but again, we won't get into that. But JaVale McGee and Cam Payne, and I'm just really impressed. Can they look? I'm not going to say they're going to make the finals again, but they're making a good case for it.
And also, too, I want to focus in on the New York Knicks. I know they're losing as of right now to the Charlotte Hornets at home, but it looks like they're starting to finally turn around a little bit. I know they were the surprise team in the league last year. Currently, they're under 500. I know Derrick Rose, our guy from Chicago, is injured. He's gone for a while. Julius Randle, the most improved player from a year ago in the first-time All-Star, he just hasn't lived up to expectations. Do you think the Knicks will have enough to make a playoff run this year?
They might. I think they get. I think they sneak into the playing game. Other than that, beyond that, I don't think so. With all the injuries and now Julius Randle, people are turning on him in New York, and of course,
Mhm.
D Rose being hurt right now. I warned everybody. We here in Chicago, we went through this. Things happen, and guys get banged up, and now everything's sort of kind of the wheels are starting to fall off. So I think they can finish strong and get into the play-in, but I just don't see it.
Another team that's struggling in the Eastern Conference, as I mentioned during our scheduling preview, the Atlanta Hawks. They're 17-25 on the season. They'll play the Milwaukee Bucks later on today on TNT as part of the TNT's MLK doubleheader. Trey Young, we started to see some improvements from him. I know they've been dealing with COVID issues and injuries as well. Do you see them turn it around?
I mean, I think they can, but like I said, I think it's hard. Again, that was another team that benefited from some of the injuries in the Eastern Conference. So I don't know. I mean, Trey Young, I know he's had his struggles. I know some of the supporting cast. I know like I said, I know they've been having COVID issues. I think John Collins, is the subject of trade rumors.
Mhm.
So again, you just don't know, and you want to give Nate McMillan all the credit in the world, but I think some of the shortcomings for Atlanta is starting to show, and I think that's why they're near the bottom of the East right now.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with those teams as they go along in this NBA season. Lakeena, we hit the bottom of the hour. Is going to be our last break for the show. You're listening to Second City Sports on the special Martin Luther King Holiday Edition, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. When we return, we'll have to get into some college basketball. There are some college basketball hoops going on right now. It looks like it's going to be a bar burning between Purdue and Illinois down in Champaign, and we'll get to some of the other top teams that were in action from over the weekend, and we'll have a whole lot more fun. So stay right there. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. The Bears interviewed former Dolphins coach Brian Flores and Saints assistant GM Jeff Ireland for their vacant coach and GM jobs on Friday. Flores was let go by the Dolphins after leading Miami to a 24-25 record over 3 years. Ireland was Miami's GM from 2008 to 2013. They won the AFC East with an 11-5 record in his first season after going 1-15 in the season before. Ireland was hired by New Orleans in 2015, essentially replacing Ryan Pace when he became Chicago's GM. The Bears fired Matt Nagy and Pace following a 6-11 season. NBA this afternoon, 2:30 tip-off for the Bulls at Memphis. Chicago with a half-game lead over the Nets on top of the Eastern Conference. The Grizzlies had an 11-game winning streak snapped in a 112-85 loss Friday against the Mavericks. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Fever is the leading symptom of COVID and the flu, and the only way to reliably detect fever is with an accurate thermometer. Be vigilant and be accurate with the Exergen Temporal Scanner, proven in more than 100 clinical studies. Don't rely on non-contact thermometers. They are proven to be inaccurate and will not reliably detect a fever that might mean COVID. Be sure to seek medical advice at the first sign of fever. Learn more at Exergen.com.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on the special Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Edition. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. This is our last segment of the show for today. And Lakeena, let's wrap it up by first talking about some college hoops. Let's start off locally here in the state of Illinois. Of course, we have a game going on right now down in Champaign, Illinois. Is number 4 ranked Purdue Boilermakers. They currently holding on to a 3-point lead over the 17th ranked Fighting Illini, 83-80. They're in the second overtime. We'll see if Illinois can pull it out. They were trailing by 11 points at the half, but they came back. Purdue failed to score down the stretch, and that's why we're in the double overtime session right now. It looks like Purdue is trying to pull away, but we'll see what happens with that. But I want to go back to last Friday's game between Illinois and Michigan State. Illinois, both teams started up struggling from the field, but in that second half, Kofi Cockburn proved his dominance as Illinois defeated the shorthanded Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, it was actually a nice game and a nice showing by Illinois. I know Michigan's got their own issues, at the top. We won't get into that, but it's sort of one of those things. As I'm looking at this game right now, I've been watching this game all late. I think just as they just hit the 3, they cut the lead down to 2. But yeah, I mean, going back to Friday's game, I mean, I watched a little bit of it, but look, I think Michigan's been having their struggles this year. So the fact that Cockburn had 21 and they were able to kind of pull off that win against Michigan. Michigan actually had an early lead, but Illinois was kind of able to he started heating up from 3 and they were able to pull it out. But yeah, it was a nice showing by Illinois. And like I said before, Michigan, I know a lot of people said they've probably been one of the disappointments this year, for various reasons. I know injuries and such, but this was a nice win for Illinois.
But for Illinois, Alfonso Plummer had 15 points, including 2 of 6. Including 5 of 12 shooting. Trent Frazier, he controlled the pace for the Illini in that second half. He had 18 points, including 5 of 11 shooting. He also dished out 7 assists as well. When Illinois controls the pace and they don't turn the ball over, they usually win the majority of the time. I did like the comment that Jim Jackson made on the broadcast on FS1 last Friday. He was calling the game with Joe Davis. And Jim Jackson was explaining on how Brad Underwood struggled his first 2 years. The starters that you see on the team now, Brad Underwood was teaching those guys the first couple of years. Now, the last couple of years, we saw the Defiant Illini start to have some success, and you're starting to see their full potential now. So I thought that was a great point that Jim Jackson made on the broadcast last Friday.
Well, Frazier's one of those guys. He's one of those energy guys. He kind of reminds you a lot of Kobe White. He's kind of the energy guy that kind of gives you that sense of, okay, you know what, we're definitely going to have a little bit of energy, a little jolt of it, and they're going to need it right now too. They're down 4 with about a minute 35 left in the double overtime throw. So, I think Illinois, that Big Ten is wide. That Big Ten conference is wide open. So, we'll be interested to see which teams can step up. But, going into Saturday's game, Baylor has been struggling lately. They lost to Texas Tech. Of course, they lose to Oklahoma State at home. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of like, I'm not freaking out right now. I know Baylor fans are a little bit scared, but I don't think they should be, because I feel like they'll get it together. It's like I said, you're going to a stretch where, you're in the middle of the season, you're starting conference play, you're going to get the best out of all your teams, especially when there are really no weak teams in the Big 12. So I think that's what they're kind of getting at. And I think they'll be okay. Gonzaga is the new number 1 in the country. They beat Santa Clara. Auburn, who I think should have been number 1. They've had very impressive wins lately. They beat Ole Miss by 9. Look, Bruce Pearl, whether you like him or not, has his guys playing pretty well right now. They're 16-1. They beat Alabama. That was a thrilling game. Early last week. So they should be number 1, but of course they're not. But again, that's another conversation there. But Auburn has looked really good, so they should definitely be considered for definitely the number 1 ranking. UCLA bounced back. They lost to Oregon. They beat Oregon State pretty easily. Oregon, who should be number 1, they've beaten both the LA area teams. They beat UCLA last Thursday, and they beat USC this past Saturday. So why aren't they being considered for to be in the top 25? They were in the top 15 earlier this year. So I don't know, but I don't know what weird things with that goes on the minds of the AP voters. Also Northwestern, Northwestern beat Michigan State.
I saw that by 2.
At least look, this is their first win against Michigan State. I think over a decade. So yeah, the ending was a little bit weird, but Chris Collins needed that win desperately because they had been struggling lately. They were 1-3 and 1-4 in the Big Ten, so they definitely needed that win.
Yeah, congratulations to Northwest. As I said before, Lakeena, about the Wildcats. they had a couple of years. They had that one great year a few years ago in making the NCAA tournament. It's almost mirrors their football program. You have a successful season, and then you turn around, you have a couple of bad seasons. There's no consistencies there. Let's see if they can surprise some people and pick it up, because if they don't, it's going to be another long off season for Chris Collins and crew. Let's go to Sunday's action. Villanova with a big win yesterday over Butler, 82-42. And Ohio State, that's another one of those Big Ten teams we were talking about last week, Lakeena. They got by Penn State 61-56.
Yeah, I mean, I think Villanova's starting to heat back up a little bit. I know they had a couple, not necessarily bad losses, but they had a couple losses a few weeks ago. They're starting to kind of find their groove now. They're hitting their threes. They beat Butler pretty handily by 40 points. Good grief. But yeah, I mean, and also to Ohio State, I mean, they could definitely make a case. And E.J. Liddell, if that's a guy that came back to school, he's making a big contributions for his Buckeyes, and they've looked really good too. And we'll see. I mean, that should be they play Illinois in a few days, so that should be a fun matchup there. And look, it'll be interesting to see what they do. And like I said, that Big Ten's wide open, so there are multiple teams that can win that conference this year. Arizona beat Utah. Duke, it looks like they're starting to kind of find their groove a little bit too. I mean, remember they were on pause for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They beat NC State. Kansas, they're starting to kind of get back into it too. Arkansas, quote unquote upset, but not really, especially without their coach Eric Musselman, who's missing a couple of games due to health safety protocols. They beat LSU at LSU. Iowa State, I mean, can they get a little bit of love too? They beat Texas by 9, and also to Kentucky. Also to thoughts of prayers go out to Joe B. Hall, who was only one of three guys, who was one of only three guys to win the national championship as alma mater, and also to win as a player. He won a national championship with Adolph Rupp as his coach in 1949, but also too he led the team in 1978 to win the national championship. That was significant because that was the first integrated squad for Kentucky that won a national championship. So that's why that's pretty significant. And look, Kentucky, I think he was a beloved figure there, and look, I think Kentucky wanted to make sure that that they gave him something to smile from above. They beat Tennessee pretty handily. Ty Washington Jr. had 28 points, so that was a fun showing by Kentucky. So also too, thoughts of prayers go out to Mr. Hall and the rest, and his family, and also the Kentucky community. I know he was still a beloved fixture there, even when he retired back in the early 80s.
You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in living color. You're listening to Second City Sports. Sid, Lakeena here with you as we wrap up today's show. Let's continue the college basketball talk, Lakeena, by looking forward to some of the big games this upcoming week in the top 25. I'm looking at the schedule already. This will interest me a great deal. This game will take place tomorrow night at 6 p.m. on ESPN. We have former Loyola head coach Porter Moser, his 12-5 Oklahoma Sooners. They'll host the number 7 ranked Kansas Jayhawks in a Big 12 action. That should be fun.
Yeah, that should be fun. And look, I mean, Oklahoma's kind of been up and down, but Kansas, that's gonna be a tough one, of course. That should be a lot of fun, and I think they beat them. I think Oklahoma has beaten them before in the last couple of years, so that should be an interesting one there. That's a early game at 6:00. Baylor hoping to bounce back. They got to go at West Virginia. Note the start time though, folks, at 4:00. Remember, a lot of these are makeup games because of COVID and such. So that's why you're seeing some of these. You're seeing Purdue and Illinois play at 11 a.m. and you're seeing Baylor and West Virginia playing at 4. They were supposed to have played a couple of weeks back. Let's see some other good ones here. North Carolina, Miami at 6:00 on ACC Network. Hubert Davis having a solid showing for his first season as head coach at UNC at his alma mater. Miami's at 5-1. These are two of the top teams in the ACC. North Carolina is 4-1, so that should be a fun one down there in Miami. South Florida and Houston. Also to Loyola, number 22 Loyola and Evansville in the Missouri Valley, and the ESPN Plus defying Drew Valentine's. They're backed ranked, so it's good to see them back ranked. K-State in Texas at 7:30 on the Longhorn Network. That should be a fun one. Duke of Florida State Same with the theme here. Joby Hall actually hired Leonard Hamilton. That was actually his first assistant coaching job. Of course, at the time, in the Southern schools, they didn't want to hire a lot of black head coaches. So Joby Hall gave Leonard Hamilton his big break. And Duke and Florida State, there's been a good match at these last couple of years, especially down there in Tallahassee. Wisconsin, Northwestern at 8 o'clock. Northwestern, hopefully maybe they can pull off another upset. We'll see Iowa State and Texas Tech. That should be a fun one. That's 8 o'clock on ESPNU.
And let's go over to Wednesday's action at 6 p.m. on ESPN2. SEC basketball, number 13 ranked LSU Tigers. They're checking in at 15-2. They'll face the Alabama Crimson Tide. They're 11-6.
That should be a fun one down there in Tuscaloosa. Let me see here. Marquette, Villanova.
Yeah, go ahead.
CBS Sports Network. So if you guys have that, Shaka Smart, his first season down there, he's got his team playing very well up there in Wisconsin, the Golden Eagles. So we'll see if they can pull out the upset in Philly.
Also, wrapping up the night on Wednesday on ESPNU at 8 p.m., we have number 2 Auburn. They'll host Georgia. And on FS1 at 8 p.m., we'll have number 28 Xavier. The Musketeers will travel here to Chicago to face the DePaul Blue Demons. DePaul still hanging on over 500 with a 10-6 mark.
Yeah, that should be. We'll see if they can pull off another upset. But again, Xavier's been playing pretty well. They got their 3-point shoot is probably like one of the tops in the conference. So they're gonna have to defend the 3, and we'll see if they can do just that. Thursday, go ahead. You finish up.
Yeah, we have a final to pass along. 96-88, Purdue defeats Illinois down there in Champaign in double overtime. The Fighting Illini will suffer their first loss in the Big Ten this season. Purdue will improve to 4-2 in Big Ten conference play.
Yeah, more early afternoon games, please. And our girl Caitlin Sharkey, who of course is a sports anchor reporter for Fox Chicago, even she said that she likes the sort of the vibe that you get for very March Madness vibes with these early games. So we might be seeing more of these. You never know. Georgetown, Providence. That's at 4 o'clock on FS1. This is for Thursday. Also, it's always good when these two in-state rivals clash. Indiana and Purdue, 6 o'clock on FS1 as well. That's the doubleheader, early afternoon doubleheader, I should say. That should be a lot of fun. And of course, Mike Woodson, his Indiana team's playing pretty well right now. And, Purdue, of course, with that big win against Illinois. So they get a couple of days off before they are back in action. Again, this is sort of a makeup. These are all makeup games, some of these. So, for those who are wondering about the scheduling. But also SMU and Memphis. Memphis has been struggling a little bit lately. So let's see if they can, let's see if they can kind of, get back into the swing of things. Also, too, in the Ohio Valley, you got the top 2 teams in that conference on ESPN News getting a little love there. 6 o'clock, you got Belmont and Morehead State. So that should be a fun one for all you guys who are going to be looking for schools to cheer for during the big dance. It might be between these 2 teams in the Ohio Valley tournament. So make sure you check that out.
Yeah, wrapping up the Thursday schedule at 6:30 on the Pac-12 network. We have number 16 USC. The Trojans will travel to Colorado to take on the Buffaloes. At 8 p.m. on FS1, number 25 UConn will face Butler. On CBS Sports Network at 10 p.m., we'll have number 1 Gonzaga hosting San Francisco. At the same time on ESPNU, number 3 Arizona, the Wildcats will travel to Stanford to take on the Cardinal. And at the same time at 10 p.m. on Thursday, FS1, we'll have number 9 UCLA. The Bruins will travel to Utah to take on the Utes. So that's your college basketball schedule for this upcoming week.
Just a reminder about that San Francisco game, Gonzaga game. San Francisco's 12-3 right now. So, and they're 2-1 in conference play. So this is not going to be an easy task. 15-3, I should say. San Francisco is, and this is not going to be an easy task for Gonzaga. And I think people are going to see that the San Francisco team's actually been pretty good. There's been a lot of buzz about them. Since the season started, they got a very veteran-laden squad. So we'll see if they can give Gonzaga and pull off the upset. UCLA and Utah, that should be a fun one too as well. Also, Arizona and Stanford, like you mentioned, this should be a fun one, and it should be one down over in Palo Alto. So that should be that should be a lot of fun. And like I said, the Pac-12, I should say, is starting to kind of get back into their scheduling. So we're seeing all these games, early games. So should be fun, this week in college hoops as usual.
Yeah. You're listening to Second City Sports on the special MLK edition right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in living color. Sid Lakeena here with you. Before I get to my topic to close out the show, Lakeena, let's show some love to the Chicago Blackhawks as we'll mention hockey just for a minute or two. The Blackhawks are on the current 4-game winning streak. They'll travel to Seattle to face the Kraken by Kraken. Shout out to Terry Boers. The Chicago Blackhawks will take on the Seattle Kraken today at 4 p.m. And you can watch that game locally on NBC Sports Chicago. The Blackhawks are continuing to climb themselves out of a big hole. Looking at there are now 15, 18, and 5 on the season. Last Saturday night, they got an important 3-0 win against the Anaheim Ducks. Congratulations to Marc-Andre Fleury on his 70th career shutout, his third of the season in the Blackhawks uniform. Lakeena, I know this is not the team that we're used to seeing in years past, but they're getting it done defensively. And Patrick Kane finally lit the lamp. That was very nice to see.
Yeah, and I think seeing that can also help with the confidence. Now, look, will they make the playoffs? Look, I don't think that's going to happen. But can they at least finish strong and perhaps maybe make a play for one of the wild card spots? Still a lot of season left, so I'm thinking that's going to be should be very interesting to see how strong they finish. But yeah, it should be a fun one. And also too, like you said, we've won 4 in a row, so it's been such a cool story these last couple of weeks. And like I said, it was great to actually see Patrick Kane score today. So that scored in that game. So that that was great to see because it's been a minute since he scored, unfortunately. But you see contributions. Alex DeBrincat. I mean, got into the All-Star game. For the NHL, the lone Blackhawk, if you will. So it's good to see. And hopefully, maybe like I said before, it might be tough to try to make one of those wild card spots, but I'm sure, they're going to try. And I think that's all you want if you're a Blackhawks fan.
And we also worried about Marc-Andre Fleury. Does he have to carry this team? It looks like he has to because of the lack of scoring right now. But he's been doing a great job in that. Of course, we talked about the issues off the ice early in the season. Lakeena, looks like this group, which had nothing to do with it, they've gone past it and give the new interim head coach Derek King all the credit in the world. He has this team focused. They're playing a new style of hockey. Like you said, Lakeena, will it end result up in a playoff spot? We'll see. But right now, they're playing a style of hockey that is effective right now, given everything else that's going on around the Canadian teams in the hockey world in general with COVID still lingering on and
a lot
postponements.
of these games will have to be that's they have to make up for a lot of these games too. So
Mhm.
it'll it'll get pretty interesting. But like we've been saying, give Hawks all the credit for kind of keeping up with all the crazy that's been happening around them.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Can they make it 5 games in a row? We'll see later today. The puck drop is at 4 p.m. on NBC Sports Chicago. So they'll take on the Seattle Kraken on their West Coast trip. Lakeena, do you have any other thoughts before I get to my last topic for today?
Just a couple of things. It's sort of like I said before. I mean, it's great to see HBCUs getting the spotlight. Notre Dame's playing right now. They're playing in Howard, in DC, to play the Howard Bison. They actually were supposed to play this game, I believe, last month, but because of COVID issues with Howard, they had to push the game back. So they picked they picked MLK Day to play the game. So but that's okay. But look, Mike Bray's team is up 4 right now against the Bison. As you can see, the place is pretty packed. So I guess national television. It's on the big Fox network, so that's pretty cool. Also, too, you got the Aussie Open going on right now. I'm not going to get into the whole thing with Novak Djokovic because that's going to take about an hour, and we don't have the time, and I don't want to talk about it. But we'll see. I mean, that's like I said before. I think now that he's out, you got to think. Nadal will probably be a guy that's gonna get a lot of will probably get a lot of bets to win. He's got like 3 of these, so you got to think. Also Dominic Thiem, you got to think he's going to be considered one of the favorites as well. So I think I would advise folks to still watch it, even though yes, it's going to be with all the weird things happening with Djokovic and such. But look, it should be a fun one down in Melbourne, and I'm also to our best wishes to Chrissy Everett, who won like 5 of these in her career. She is battling ovarian cancer right now, so you got to wish her thoughts and prayers, get well wishes to her. So a lot going on down there in Australia.
Yeah. Going back to college basketball just a second, Lakeena, we all know that MLK Day is dominated by the NBA and to a lesser extent NHL, which both those leagues usually have early afternoon games and some primetime games as well. With the I know we'll talk about this on Friday. We'll see what the numbers are in terms of ratings for the Purdue Illinois game and with Howard and Notre Dame. Hopefully, there'll be a close game today as well. Assuming that the ratings will be decent for the big network at Fox, do you see college basketball scheduling more games on around the Martin Luther King Day holiday going forward?
I think so. I think there's been some lobbying for it. I feel like that's one of the reasons why they did what they did. Why that's one of the reasons why Purdue and Illinois was played during this time. And it was just by accident that the Notre Dame Howard game, I guess both the ADs and I guess both the coaches decided to have the games, today. They're in, Howard's in DC, obviously. So, I think that's probably what led to it. But I saw a couple of the shirts with a couple of Notre Dame players. But I think I'm sure on Howard's side as well, saying stand together. So
Yeah.
why not? And then look, I'm sure, like I said, ESPN has been doing a really a much better job of showcasing a lot of these HBCU schools. Not just in February for Black History Month, but also too pretty much year round. And I'm sure Fox is going to do the same thing. I know they're starting to kind of have a TV deal with both the MEAC and the SWAC. So, and also I think Hampton's moving conferences again as well. So I think there's a lot more no's. I think people just want the attention, and of course you're going to have that senior day with some of the top players from the HBCU schools playing football. So look, I think it's going to be on NFL Network. I think this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check, but I think they just want to be noticed. And look, we've seen teams, players from these HBCUs go to the Hall of Fame. So I think it's good to see that the big networks are kind of giving them more notice.
Yeah, we'll see what happens going forward, both in college basketball and college football. Last topic for me today, right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeena, I usually don't say this phrase a lot, but I have to be truthful to myself when I say this phrase. You're getting old, and the reason why I'm saying that is because last night after all the football games and a couple of basketball games that I watched. You remember this program. I think we talked about it before. You remember NBA Inside Stuff. It ran for, I believe, 12 seasons. It culminated with the NBA on NBC coverage from the 1990-91 season until 2002 when it left. Of course, Inside Stuff moved to ABC for the next couple years. I know it was brought back by NBA TV. With Grant Hill and Chris Stiletto. That lasted a few seasons, but I was watching. There was a couple old episodes that was uploaded by another channel last night on YouTube. I started to watch them. It was this one episode. They were talking about the Bulls and building the United Center at the time. This was 2 years before that building even opened, and it was another episode they had about Charles Barkley. This is when he got traded to Phoenix. It's almost like a career reflection episode. Of course, I remember watching it every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on NBC5 here in Chicago. Of course, I had to flip between that and Soul Train on Channel 9. But as Inside Stuff got popular over the years, and of course, changes happened to Soul Train, I lost interest in Soul Train. It was NBA Inside Stuff for me. But of course, look at that Ahmad Rashad. I know he's a retired broadcaster now, but you could tell that program was geared toward young fans. But if you were just a sports fan in general, or just a hardcore basketball fans like we were, you watched Inside Stuff. They had all the features on all the big time stars, including the supporting players on some of these big time teams as well. Of course, you had Ahmad Rashad had various co-hosts over the years. Julie Moran, who went on to Entertainment Tonight, she was there for the first season. Most people forgot. Of course, Willa Bay was there for the next 5-6 years. Of course, you had Summer Sanders, who rounded out the co-hosting duties with Ahmad Rashad. Of course, that show was produced by NBA Entertainment, but it was seen on NBC every Saturday morning. And it felt good for me last night to watch that with all the nostalgia. I remember watching all the. We talked about the TNBC shows before a couple of times on this show, but I remember once it hit 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, turn to Channel 5, stay right there watching Inside Stuff, and it was just great to see for me last night, watching some of those old segments. What was your favorite part of the show?
Well, yeah, it was, of course, jam session and those types of, profiles, also the player profiles. 'Cause you got to know some of the players a little bit because back then you really didn't have too much access to them. So at the
Hmm.
time, so NBA inside stuff, of course, there have been other, copies of it, other various sports and then the Olympics, whenever the Olympics would be on, they had similar type of programming. Also, I think the
Hmm.
NFL, I think they tried to do it, but it didn't work. So
Hmm.
that didn't work. But look, it was sort of a routine. Once all the cartoons, all the TNBC shows were over with, you could either tune in the inside stuff or American Bandstand or Soul Train or one of those those storybook specials that be on
Yeah.
CBS and ABC. So good times. And unfortunately, these today's kids will never know, and they'll never have the experiences that we had when we were kids. And also too, I kind of feel like there hasn't been this sort of this thing where nowadays you don't need those types of shows anymore because you've got Instagram, you've got
Hmm.
TikTok, you've got Twitter, you've got social media for
Very
players.
good point. Very
If
good
you
point.
want to, yeah, if you want to look, if you want to learn about what's going on with the player, they'll just tell you. I mean, they want you can go
Hmm.
to their Insta story. So that's why, unfortunately, I don't think that's probably why I think the new incarnation with Grant Hill and our girl Kristen Ledlow didn't last very long because you really don't need shows like that anymore. If we want to get to know a player, you got YouTube if you want to see highlights or if you want to watch
Hmm.
games and such. So there are various places you can go. So it just reminds me of a simpler time, I guess. And you know, you yearn for those times, but
I just remember watching Inside Stuff. Remember before Inside Stuff came on the air, for those features that we talked about on the superstars and some of the teams, you had to watch the NBA on CBS every Sunday for those features. And you had to, if you were lucky enough to have cable in the late '80s, you had to watch the NBA on TBS to get some of those specials. But after Inside Stuff came out, you would look forward to watching those fun features every week. And I noticed some of the local coverage of some of these teams back in the '90s, including WGN and Sports Channel, they had to step up their features as well because
mm-hmm.
Inside Stuff had, of course, the backing of NBA Entertainment producing
Yep.
that all that content. And so
Yep.
Inside Stuff was good. It came at the right time. Profiling all of the big players, of course, it helped them profile Michael Jordan go worldwide as well. So that show helped make the NBA much bigger back in those days. And like you said, Lakeena, social media has just changed everything. Now people can download it and go to it on the instant. You don't have to wait to watch it on television.
Right. And I think that's sort of like kind of what changed the game. And I think look, that's why you didn't have those type of, even the local sports teams didn't have that type of access back then. So
Hmm.
like you said, I think that's why they had to step it up. And that's why, but unfortunately with social media now, you don't need that anymore. So it makes you, going on YouTube kind of makes you also feel old because you're seeing that, oh my God, like look at the
Yeah.
commercials. Like the commercials, like, especially in the 70s, they had cigarette commercials back in the day.
Yeah.
So they just hello FCC, but
Yeah. How
also
times have changed.
yeah, also some breaking news. For the first time, the NHL will be doing an all-female NHL broadcast featuring the Arizona Coyotes and the Montreal Canadiens for tonight. Leah Hextall and Cassie Campbell Pascal will be doing the play-by-play. Linda Cohn will be doing on the rink side reporting. So they'll air that on ESPN. So ESPN making a little bit of history there, airing the first ever all-female announcing team for the NHL.
Yeah, and I'll be watching that tonight. Of course, we talked about it, Lakeena, during the 2020 NBC tried it with Kate Scott and AJ Malesko. Of course, AJ is with ESPN now, and she's still doing stuff with the New York Islanders. NBC was very successful in doing that. Good luck to the ladies on ESPN for tonight. I'll definitely be tuning in.
Yeah, and also Leah is terrific. If you know her uncle is Rob Hextall, so of course that's a
Yep.
hockey loving family. So also Cassie, I believe she played for the Canadian team. If I'm not
Yes, she
mistaken.
did. And she used to work for Hockey Night in Canada as well as one of their analysts and reporters.
Yeah, she's terrific. I think she won like multiple like world championships and gold medals and stuff. Of course, we know Linda Cohn. She's a big hockey fan. I know she's excited. Was super excited when ESPN got the hockey back. She has her own podcast on ESPN Plus with hockey. So I know this should be a fun one. So you guys, all you NHL fans, make sure you guys check that out.
Yep, check it out. All right, Lakeena, that's been another edition of Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago. As we pay tribute to the late great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on this special day today. Great job. As once again, we like to send our condolences to the Les Grobstein family, the Chicago sports broadcaster who passed away yesterday at the age of 69. Lakeena, I'm sure some of the other hosts, as you mentioned, on 670 The Score in Chicago will have their various tributes and comments on Les Grobstein throughout the week. I'm sure we're going to bring it up again on Friday.
Yeah, and also to our buddy Rayford Weigel, of course. If you guys know his late father, Tim, he posted something on Twitter. The last time he saw him was a couple years back at a Chicago Wolves game, and he shared some stories Grobber did with him about his late father. Of course, Tim did. Of course, Rayford, worked here for a few years too, doing news and sports. But of course, his dad Tim was a legend here in Chicago, and I can imagine those two are now sharing stories as we speak upstairs now. So yeah, this is a big loss. Again, another big loss for the Chicago sports radio landscape, because Les was definitely, like we mentioned it earlier, he was definitely the epitome of what the voice of the fan was for Chicago sports. So he's definitely going to be missed, and he was still doing it too. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that overnight shift. Do they split it up? Do they give it back? Well, of course, CBS Sports Radio, they don't air after 11, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Not
with
here
that.
in Chicago, but they air everywhere else.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that spot. But look, like I said earlier, I'm sure Mitch Rosen, I'm sure he'll figure it out.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. Lakeena, closes out.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast at War on Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And make sure you follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes, remember, Second City Sports airs live every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. That's every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
All right, so you guys be careful out there. I know there's a lot of severe weather going on over there, or about to happen over there in the south and the northeast and the eastern seaboard. So please be careful, over there. And if you're not going to get vaccinated, wear a mask, wash your hands, and be good to each other. For Sydney Brown, I'm Lakeena McGee. This is Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you Friday.
Till then, holla.